7th day of the month of Mar Cheshvan, and we are in the midst of Maseches Pesachim, top of Daf Samech Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara had been discussing a machlokes between Rav Chisda and Rabba. The case was, which we mentioned yesterday, top of Samech Aleph Amud Beis. The question was, what happens if somebody shechted a korban Pesach? Al Menashi is kapur by Arelim Bizrika. So that when the blood of the korban Pesach is thrown at the Mizbeach, it should also work in some way, shape, manner, or form for people that are not permitted, not allowed to, not able to eat from the korban Pesach because they are Arelim, they are uncircumcised. Rav Chisda said it was possible. Rabba said it was kosher. The Gemara had gone through a lengthy brisa that Rabba had used to explain according to him, or that the Gemara suggested that Rabba would explain one way and Chisda would explain another way, and then the Gemara rejected that. The Gemara rejected both of those interpretations with the understanding that v'chol orel lo yochel bay does not mean if the whole group is arelim, but v'chol orel lo yochel bay means not all, but any. Or not any, but all, and then the word v'zos came along to teach us that that would tell you that if there was only a mixus chabura that were arelim, it would be mutter. It would still be kosher. That was where we got up to yesterday, and the very bottom of Samach Aleph Amud Beis says the Gemara Ela Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi Rav Chisda v'Rabba, Rav Chisda and Rabba. Turning on to Samach Aleph Amud Beis, Samach Beis Amud Aleph. Bahai Krokim Ifligi. What are they arguing? They're arguing about the following pasuk. The pasuk says as follows: with regards to a korban in general, the pasuk says v'nirtza loi lechaper alav. That once the blood of the korban is thrown onto the mizbech, v'nirtza loi lechaper alav, it will be desirous for him, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu will find this good, and it will provide him with kapara. Alav v'loy al chavera. I mean that alav, that the korban will work for him. It's not going to work for his friend. Rabba holds chavera dumyadidei, that his friend, just like him, mahu debar kapara, just like he is able to achieve kapara, av chavera debar kapara. So to his friend who is able to get kapara through a korban. La'afuke high orel, which would exclude this orel delav bar kaparahu, who's not even relevant to the korban. Meaning the fact that you were thinking about a orel at the point in time that you did zrikas adam is the same as if you were thinking about a shoe. It doesn't, meaning he's not relevant to the korban at all. So it's as if you didn't have intention to include an orel because the orel is not relevant to this korban bichlal. If it would have been that you would have in mind for somebody else that was mutter to have to be involved in korban Pesach, maybe that would be a problem. But this wouldn't be a problem at all, and therefore says Rabba, it's going to be mutter. It's still going to be kosher. Rav Chisda holds hi orel nami. This orel also is included in korban Pesach. Why? Given the bar chiyuvahu, since on a fundamental level he is still a bar chiyuva, he is still obligated in korban Pesach. Bar chiyuvahu, he is fundamentally obligated in korban Pesach, and therefore he is bar kaparahu. He could get kapara, meaning the korban could work for him. Hoil since the ibayim is akinashe, because if he wanted to, he could go ahead and get a bris milah. He could fix himself. Says the Gemara. Hold on a second. We've met Rabba and Rav Chisda before already in our Masechta with regards to the conversation about Hoil, with questions about cooking from Shabbos, from Yantav to Shabbos. And what we had established back then was, Umi Isle Rav Chisda Hoil. Does Rav Chisda really believe in the concept of Hoil? That you could say, since I would be able to do this, therefore it's as if I'm treated as if it is applicable to me now. It says, Vaha Idmar, didn't we say already? Somebody that cooked, somebody that baked a whole bunch of matzahs or a whole bunch of chalas on a Yom Tov afternoon, and then is going to use them on Matzah Yom Tov. Rav Chisda says, like, he gets malchus for that, because he has violated the Isser of cooking and baking on Yom Tov, not for the purpose of cooking, of eating on Yom Tov. Rabba says, he doesn't get malchus for that. Why? Rabba Amar Amrina. The reason it doesn't get malchus is because we say because it would be, since if guests would show up, it would be fitting, they would be able to eat it. So to here on a fundamental level, the cooking, the baking that he has done on Yantif is not asur, because if guests showed up, he'd feed them. It would be eaten on Yantif. V'lo lucky, and he doesn't get malchus. Rav Chisda Amar, but Rav Chisda tells us like that he does get malchus. He gets smacked for that. Why? Because lo amrin ha'il, we don't have the principle of ha'il according to Rav Chisda. Says the Gemara, how could it be that in this case that we just said, Rabbi is going to be the one that says that that the Orel is totally out of the picture, and Rav Chisda is the one that's saying, employing the principle of ha'il. This is opposite to what we've seen before. Says the Gemara, Bishlama Rabba Ada Rabba like Kasha. Rabba arguing with Rabba is not a problem here. Why? Because here, what's missing is an activity. There's an action that is missing, meaning he needs to go and get a bris milah in order for him to be fitting. You can't say, oh, that he could get a bris milah. He didn't get a bris milah. Hasama, when it came to baking, he's done everything. What's missing is, do people show up or not? That's not up to him. There's not something that's within his control about whether or not people are going to show up, says Rabbah. That since this activity that he did in this circumstance would be good on Yantif, and in that circumstance would not be good on Yantif, but that's only depending on whether or not guests come. So we say that the same activity is mutter. The same activity is going to be mutter in both cases, because the guest showing up is not up to him. But when it comes to the bris milah, we're not going to say ha'il when it comes to bris milah, because he needs to get a bris milah in order to be included in the parasha of people that might be now chayiv in Korban Pesach. It says Ella the Rav Chisda kasha, but the question about Rav Chisda saying ha'il in this case, where he didn't say ha'il in that case, that is taka problematic. Says the Gemara Amri, what do we say? Ki leisle the Rav Chisda ha'il. Where do we say that Rav Chisda doesn't have the principle of ha'il? Lekula. When it is to be lenient, to tell you that you can bake from Yantif to Matzah Yantif. L'chumra, but to be machmir, to say that you're going to invalidate the karban if you were thinking about an RL. So, Isle, yeah, we could employ ha'il there, meaning we're not going to say to be makel, but to be machmir for ha'il, we will absolutely be machmir for ha'il. Amalei Marzutra b'direi derav Mari l'Ravina. Marzutra, the son of Rav Mari, said to Ravina, Ketani, we have a brisa that says the following: Ha'il va'orla poselas. Since being an orel, not having a bris milah is going to be posel, it's going to invalidate a person for eating from the Korban Pesach. V'tumah poselas, and being tummy is also going to invalidate a person from being able to eat the Korban Pesach. My tumah lo also ba mikzas tumah kachol tumah, af orla lo also mikzas orla kachol orla. Just like partial tumah is not considered to be like complete tumah, meaning ostensibly some of the people in the group are tameh, doesn't make everybody in the group tameh. So too, some of the people being arelim is not going to make the whole group into arelim. It's not considered to be completely. I mean, partial lack of being mohel is not going to make you into an arel. Says the Gemara, okay, what are we talking about here? Hi tuma hechidami. What is the tumah that we are talking about? That we are trying to compare between oral and tameh. Ilema betumas gavri. If you are talking about the tumah of people, that somebody in the group is tameh. My loy also makes this tumah called tumah. What do you mean then that you didn't make partial tumah like the whole tumah? Because if you have 4 or 5 people in a group that are tameh and 4 or 5 people in the group that are tahar, the tameh people will not puzzle the tahar people. Nami with regards to Arla, if you have some people in the group that are arelim and you have some people in the group that are Mahulim, they have a bris milah, lepasli. It's also not going to puzzle them. Ditnan, because we have a mission that says lemulim v'la'arilim. If you shech the Korban Pesach for both people that are mahul and people that are arel, they have a bris milah, they don't have a bris milah kasha. It's going to work. So ma'ishna tuma. Why would tuma be different here? Dipshitale, it would be clear to him. U'ma'ishna arla demisvikale. And why is it that tuma is so clear that this works? U'ma'ishna arla. That and Orla the misvika lay that he is unclear about. Meaning, in both cases, if there's a group of people, some of them are tahar and some of them are tameh, and a group of people, some of them have a bris milah, some of them don't. in both those cases, if you shechted the Korban Pesach, it's going to work. But the brisa that we just said, is Hoil va'orla peselas v'tumah peselas ma tumah le'asav mixes tumah v'chol tumah av orla le'asav mixes orla v'chol orla. We're learning something from mixas tumah to mixas orla, and both of these things should be equally obvious. So, what is the question that the brisa is trying to resolve? It cannot be, therefore, says the Gemara, it cannot be that we are talking about a group of people, some of them are tummy, some of them are tahar. What could you be speaking about instead? Alabatumas basar. We're talking about not the tumah of people, but the tumah of the karban itself. And what exactly do we mean? Does the brisa mean when it says that we didn't make mixas tumah, partial tumah, like the whole thing being tameh? Because if one of the evarim, one of the limbs of the Korban Pesach became tameh, had the idmi sarfinle, that which became tameh, that which is tameh, we burn. V'idach, and what about the other ones? We eat them, no problem. But maya kimta. So what are we talking about in this case? B'tumas basar, in a case where the Bryce is then talking about tumas basar, where some of the meat became tameh. So okay, let's assume that is exactly what the Bryce is talking about. Question: Emma Sefer, but the end of the Bryce then says, "Danim davar she'enu na'u b'chol hazvachim and davar she'enu na'u b'chol hazvachim." Well, we have the Bryce that tells us that we are deriving something. Danim davar she'enu na'u b'chol hazvachim, something that doesn't apply to all of the other karbanos. Midavar she'enu na'u b'chol hazvachim, from something that doesn't apply to all the karbanos. Meaning, the halacha that we are trying to learn is something that is unique to Korban Pesach. Va'al yichech zman, and like we saw the rest of yesterday, al yichech zman, don't learn from the question of zman, of timing, shenoi b'chol hazvachim, that you could mess up a korban, you could invalidate the korban by having the wrong intention of when you want to eat it in the wrong time. So, what was the argument? My tumah, and what exactly does tumah mean? If you were going to say that is talking about tumas basar, that's talking about the meat itself being tameh, more than it absolutely does apply to all other korbanos. Meaning, the question of tumah that we spoke about with regards to Korban Pesach is unique to Korban Pesach, and that's only a question of tumas gavri, the people being tameh. Meaning, if somebody in the group is tameh, they are not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. They also are not yotze the mitzvah of Korban Pesach if somebody else goes and brings it for them, because they're out of the parsha of Korban Pesach completely. But if you're talking about tumas basar, so then that is something that applies to all other korbanos. So how could it be that this beginning of the Mishnah here is talking about tumas basar if the end of the Mishnah has to be talking about tumas gavri? It's talking about the tumah that relates to people, not the tumah that relates to meat. Ella pshita b'tumas gavri. It has to be that the whole thing is talking about tumas gavri. It's talking about the tumah of people. What does it mean that it doesn't apply to all other sacrifices? But by all other korbanos, an uncircumcised person and a tamei person can send their korban with somebody else. They can send it off, and somebody else can bring the korban on their behalf. But with regards to Korban Pesach, arel v'tamei ein meshalchin bischem. An arel, an uncircumcised person, v'tamei, and an impure person, ein meshalchin bischem, they cannot send their korban. They don't have the mitzvah of Korban Pesach at all. I mean, they would need to take care of it for the tamei at least. They would need to take care of it by Pesach Sheni, and an arel needs to get a bris milah, and then it'd be az yechol, and then the pasuk says he'd be able to participate. Nafkamina, by the way. Practically speaking, we'll see this later on, that somebody that for health reasons cannot get a bris milah is part of the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. Says the Gemara, how could it be that the beginning of this Maimer Chazal of what we're talking about here is tumas basar, is talking about the tumah of meat, tumas gavri, and then the end is talking about the tumah of people, meaning you just switched around which tumah we're talking about? Says the Gemara, Amar Leis, he says to him, yeah, absolutely. In Shem Tumah Kari Parich, he's asking in general from like the idea of Tumah. It's true that there's unique dinim of Tumah that only apply to Korban Pesach, but we are saying with regards to Tumah in general, there are uniquenesses that happen in Korban Pesach, and it's true that we're switching topics from Tumas Basar to Tumas Gavri. That's what's happening. We started off discussing the Tumah of the meat, and then we ended up talking about the Tumah of the people that are bringing it. The ibai sema, or alternatively, we could say as follows. Sefer Nami Tumas Basar, the end of the Brisa is also talking about Tumas Basar. We're talking about the Tumah of meat as well, throughout the whole thing. And what is it that we say about Tumah of Basar, Tumah of the carbon itself, that doesn't apply to all other carbonas? With regards to all other carbonas, if the fats became tameh and the rest of the meat is still tahar, or the meat became tameh and the fats became are still tahar, zorik adam, you can still throw the blood onto the mizbech and it'll work. Meaning, in every korban you have korban that is going to be eaten, like a shlamim. You have the chelev, the fats that are burnt on the mizbech, and the chalavim and the imurim. You have the basa that's taken home to be eaten, and then you have the blood that's thrown on the mizbech. What happens if something becomes tahar, meaning either the meat or the fat became tameh? So says the Gemara, the din is that you still throw the blood on the mizbech and you go to the mitzvah of bringing that korban, meaning you fulfilled your obligation of bringing it. But with regards to the korban Pesach, nitma chelev ubasa kayim, if the chelev became tameh and the meat is still okay, zorik sadam, you throw the blood on the mizbech and you are yotz v'nisala. Works. You've been yotz to the mitzvah. Nitma basar v'chelev kayim, but if the basar of the korban became tameh and the chelev is still there, eino zorik sadam, you cannot throw the blood anymore. Why? Because the mitzvah is the achila. The ikar of the mitzvah of korban Pesach is the achilas haPesach. And therefore, if the meat became tameh, then there's no point of putting the blood on the mizbech because none of it's going to be helpful to you. You have to bring another korban Pesach. What have we established with regards to this? But Tumas Basar. It comes out that the whole brisa here is talking about Tumas Basar. We're talking about the Tumah of meat. Ema Sefer, but then the end of it, what do we say? Hold on a second. The end of that is we say, we learn something from something that never has the ability of becoming mutar. From something that never has the possibility of becoming mutar. And don't learn from tumah. Because sometimes tumah is going to be mutar. And that was the question about Arel. That tumah, if the whole nation is tameh, so you have a din of tumah hutra b'tzibur. We wanted to prove that tumah hutra b'tzibur, we shouldn't learn the din of Arel from that because tumah is not shaykh to it. It says, b'may, what case are we talking about here? Ilay, turning over the page, but Tumas Basar. If we're talking about a case of Tumas Basar on Samach Beis, Amud Beis at the top of the page, but Tumas Basar heicha hutra. How would that ever be hutra? Meaning, if the basar became tameh, it would never be hutar. You can never say that it's mutar. It's only in the case where the majority of the Jewish people is going to be tameh that you would say that tumah hutra b'tzibur. But if the basar of the korban pesach became tameh, then it's never going to be mutar. So how could you learn from that? So we say ela pshita b'tumas gavri. No, you have to say that you're talking about tumas gavri, like we said beforehand. We're not talking about tumas basar. With this unique case of korban pesach, we're talking about tumas gavri. Ve'hecha hudra michlala. And how do you have a case of hudra michlala? Where do you have that it could sometimes be mutar, but tzibur, if the whole community is going to be tameh? So we say Reisha b'tumas basar, sefer b'tumas gavri. But the whole beginning of the brisa is talking about tumas basar, and then the end is talking about the tumah of people. So we say, yeah, absolutely. Shem tumah kaparach. We're asking from the general category of tumah that there are certain dinim that this would apply to, and then we will see Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach a third way of interpreting this brisa tomorrow with 4 lines down at the Ibais Ema, and everybody should Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach have a wonderful day. We'll see you, please God, tomorrow.